In this video, I'll show you my basic workflow that I apply when sculpting rock props inside ZBrush. So for starters, every time before I start sculpting, I like to gather some photo references from internet. As you can see here, I just found some pictures that will really help me getting some cool ideas about the overall shape of the prop and the details on it. So yeah, if you want, you can try this. It's really helpful when I sculpt props. I'm not trying to follow too closely the shape of the photo references. I'm just trying to have some really natural looking organic references that will help me implement some really cool details into the mesh inside ZBrush. So yeah, just gather some nice pictures. As you can see here on these photos, the prop that we're about to create will have some nice sharp edges and details. Yeah, something similar to these rocks here in the photos. So let's get started. Inside ZBrush, I'll just clear the canvas. I prefer starting with the basic cube 3D from the tool palette. So just go here and select cube 3D and drag it on the canvas. Go to edit mode. Now I like to, before I start sculpting, to increase the field of view inside ZBrush. You can do that by going here into the draw tab. The default value is something like 50 degrees, but yeah, I feel like kind of constrained working with that small kind of field of view, so I like to increase it to something like 60 or 70. Then I just click Align to Object. If you want, you can click the perspective button, but yeah, for now we can just keep it this way. So then we make this cube polymesh 3D, and we click on the polyframe mode. So as you can see now, the topology it's not really appropriate for what we're about to do. We need to change the topology, so the easiest way to do this would be just to use Dynamesh. So 128 is a bit much for this. For starters, I prefer a smaller mesh density, something like yeah, 56 should be good. So just set it to something like that. Click Dynamesh, and now you can see we have even quads everywhere on the mesh. This topology is much more better for sculpting now. So yeah, and I advise you just save often your ZBrush work, because yeah, I know that it has quick save features and stuff like that, but sometimes it can crash, so it's a good idea to just keep to save often. Okay, so now we can uncheck the polyframe mode and just add a few subdivisions. Not too much though. I think that for now we don't need anything above 300k. So when sculpting props, as you can see, this is a basic cube, and the way to really break up this shape, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna quickly switch to perspective button, because that really helps me getting a better sense of the volume of the object. So inside ZBrush there are some really nice brushes, especially in the latest version. One of them is the clip curve, and there's a brush inside Whitebox that I discovered recently, very recently, and it's a really awesome brush. It's when you open the Lightbox, just go to the brush tab And as you can see here, there's a wall of folders with different kinds of brushes inside them. The one I'm talking about, it's in the trim folder, and it's trim smooth border. Now we will need again, I like to select the brushes that I will work most with, just so I can have them quickly selected here in the quick pick menu. So I'll need also the trim dynamic brush. Probably I'll need the move brush. Flatten, I'm not really sure, but yeah, okay. So let's say we are set. Now we can just switch to clip curve. Yeah, but first probably it's a good idea to break up the basic shape of the cube with the clay brush tool. So for now we can just decrease the intensity to something like 25, and I'll just start painting some, changing a bit of the shape. Now when sculpting rocks, I found it to be a really interesting process, because I have some basic idea what the prop would look like, but when sculpting in ZBrush, I often found myself changing the shape of the rock constantly, and that's really interesting because it helps you discovering very interesting shapes and coming up with something a lot better than what you originally had in mind. So okay, actually we'll need to change the height of the prop, so we'll just go in deformation tab, and here from the size slider we'll just deselect everything except the y-axis, and we'll just drag it a bit. I think, yeah, okay, that's good enough, I guess. And we didn't stretch the mesh too much, so we need to click Dynamesh again. For now the topology is fine. So now I can show you how I like to work with the clip curve brush. Just select it, and yes, you can see the prompt that this brush is used when you click, press and hold the Control Shift keys, and then just click to use it. So now we need to cut some shapes inside this cube, so let's just get started. Now you'll see that when I press the Control Shift key and drag, the first time nothing will happen. That's just a way to clean the masks, I guess, inside ZBrush. So for the second time, you'll see that when I press and hold Control Shift and drag with the mouse, this line appears, and from the one side of this line there is this gray gradient, as you can see here. So this gradient actually shows from which side the geometry will be cut from the mesh. So for example here, if I just release the buttons and the left mouse button at the same time, you'll see that the part of the mesh that is positioned on the right behind the gray gradient will just be cut off. So now we have a very nice, very cleanly cut geometry with still pretty nice topology on it. That's why I really like this brush. So let's just redo a bit. And the neat thing on this brush is that if you press and hold the Control and Shift and drag, and before release you just tap Alt key and move the mouse again, you'll see that this time this is not a straight line, it's a curve. And that really helps you with breaking up the mesh in really interesting ways. So as you can see now, it will cut and form this very nice clean cut geometry. So the other option for the curves with this brush is to again press and hold Ctrl and Shift key, drag with the mouse, and this time tap Alt key twice very quickly. Now you see that it forms a straight angle. It's not a smooth angle, but it's really sharp. So that is really helpful when you want to form some quick rock terraces shapes on your mesh. So all in all, it's really flexible brush, and I found myself using only this brush and the clay brush from the beginning. So yeah, let's just start sculpting for real this time. I'll just start by breaking up the overall shape. I'll remove these square shapes here. Now we can cut a little bit from the other side of the rock, so we have a nice terrace when we look from the side. And this brush gives you very interesting results when you cut from angle. For example, if you cut this way, it will cut the whole mesh from all sides. But for example, if you just cut with this brush from this angle, you start to get some nice interesting looking shapes. So I'll just continue. First, I'll probably just put a bit of a volume on the mesh using the clay brush. So yeah, the initial stage of creating this prop would be just adding or subtracting some mass on the rock using the clay brush, and then just using the clip curve brush to form some really nice sharp looking shapes. Okay, so here I'll probably just cut the shape like this one, and if we rotate the prop and cut like this, you can very easily form some really nice trimmed edges without using too much of the trim dynamic brushes or stuff like that. For example, here when you go from the side, just yeah, every time just tap twice the Alt key to get this nice sharp switch of the angle of the brush. Just release, and yeah, on the initial stage, don't worry if you get stuff like that. You can very easily tweak that later down the sculpting process. So for now, I'll just continue and cut some parts of this rock. Alright. Now I'll just try and smooth the edges using the trim dynamic brush. So for interesting results, I like to increase the focal shift of this brush. I like to set it to -80 or 90. Okay, but yeah, before we continue, we have to make one very important modification to this prop. Now, usually I keep the geometry from all sides of the rocks that I sculpt especially on the smaller ones, because using rotate inside CryEngine you can very easily create a big variety of rocks inside your level using only 1 or 2 props. But for this prop, since it will look like a bigger rock, we can just cut the lower side, and that will allow us to put more detail into the other parts of the rock, since we'll get more free UV space when we start creating the textures. And the other reason for which I'm about to cut the lower part of the rock is that sometimes you sculpt really nice looking details on your prop, but later when you decide to rotate the prop inside some game engine, you see that, especially if you baked some ambient occlusion in the texture, and for example you have some ambient occlusion here under this big shape, this little rock terrace, it will look kind of weird when it's turned upside down this way. So I'll sculpt different details on each side of this prop, so we'll get enough variety without using this lower part. So it's a good idea first to make sure that actually the object is placed properly, because sometimes when you sculpt in ZBrush, I don't really have an idea at which position the prop it's turned. So it's a good idea to just check the foregrid button. So yes, now as you can see, it's positioned properly on the vertical scale. It's not turned upside down, as sometimes it happens when working inside ZBrush. Okay, so after we made sure that this is the proper position of the prop, we can just turn off the grid and just continue working with the trim dynamic brush. As you can see at the beginning, I'm just trying to put some basic shapes of the rock. I'm not wasting time in sculpting really tiny details. We'll focus more on that later. So now, for example, we can put some nice shape here on this side. And we can accentuate more this shape by just cutting with the clip curve brush from this angle, and then quickly tap twice the Alt key and release in this direction, and that will create, as you can see, some really nice sharp detail. Yeah, so as you can see now, I clicked and released the mouse button while the gray gradient was on the wrong side of the prop. So yeah, you just need to make sure that the part of the geometry that you want to be cut out, it's placed from the other side, like this. As you can see now, the gradient is facing outwards of the mesh, so when I release, it will cut only the small part below the line. Okay. So I'll just continue working for a little bit with the trim dynamic brush, just decrease the size a little bit, and continue adding some basic shapes of the rock. Now here you can cut some part out, it will create a nice silhouette. So yeah, it's a good idea to frequently rotate your rock. So you just have to make sure that the silhouette of the prop will be interesting enough, because a large part of the effect that we want to achieve needs a really nice and varying silhouette from each side of the rock. So just make sure that from each side there are nice, interesting shapes. So for this side, I think we can create some really big crevice that would help getting some interesting details later on. So I'll just switch to clay. I'll increase the intensity at this point because I really need some broad strokes to quickly put some volume here. Okay, so now I'll just cut this part up. Switch to trim dynamic. I need to cut a little bit here again to accentuate a little bit the crevice. Now, okay, this is starting to look nice. Okay, so for this side, I think we can cut a little bit more here. So from the war side, I'll just cut here at a really steep angle, so later on when we put it in the level, if the player walks here, you can paint a layer with a moss texture, for example, and it will look really nice. Okay, so yeah, this side starting to look nice. I'll just add a bit volume here. So you can try to break the silhouette not only from the sides, but even when you look at the rock from the top. So you can cut, for example, here. Alright, so for this side of the rock, I think we can experiment with some nice looking rock terraces. So the way to do that would be to cut from this side. You'll see that combining multiple cuts can really help you achieve very nice looking silhouette of the rock. So now here we'll probably need to cut on this level and just drag and drop to create a rock terrace, and I'll add a little bit of volume here. Yeah, so when you start sculpting rocks, you'll see that it just takes a little bit of practice. It's not so hard. You just need good reference photos, and you just have to have a basic idea of the shapes and the type of rock that you want to create. and with some practice I think you can very easily achieve good looking results. Okay, so this one we'll accentuate by just cutting here with the clip curve brush. Now, if you want to cut only a partial part of the mesh, you can do something like this. You can just mask a part of the rock that you don't want to be cut off, and then you can, while holding Control key, just click a few times to get this nice fall-off effect of the mask. And then if you start cutting with the clip curve, you'll see that we're gonna cut only this part that is not masked. That can really help you if you want to use this brush but you don't want to cut the whole geometry on the whole side of the rock like I did a few seconds ago. So yeah, by using masking and cutting, you can really achieve some great looking results. So now I'll just do the reverse. I'll just mask here, and then by holding Control, Alt and clicking on the canvas, I'll invert the mask, and now I'll just cut here on the mask area. Okay, so let's just switch again to trim dynamic. From here you can cut a little bit to break up the silhouette from this side of the rock. Okay, this one is a bit smoother curve, so I'll just put a more harsh one. Alright. So yeah, I can say that we're pretty close to finishing the basic shape of our prop. There's only one side left. Okay, I think that here we can improve a bit the silhouette. So I'll just click here. Okay. So from this side, I think so far I tried to sculpt a very differently looking basic shapes on each side. This one has this big vertical crevice. This one it's more horizontally structured, and this one is a little bit. It's a mix of both. But yeah, you'll see that later when we put this in the level, it will look pretty organic. So for this side, I don't know, maybe just really go and break the shape, something like this. Yeah, I think that we can really improve here the silhouette by just adding this little terrace here. I'll just sculpt it quickly using the clay brush tool. And then just make the basic shape by cutting parts of it. Alright, something like that. Um, yeah, even tiny details like this would really add some variety to the prop. Later you can put inside the CryEngine editor some little weeds or grass here and here also, and that will really make it look really nice. Okay, so here I think we can just tweak this a little bit more, something like that. Okay, I think that we're pretty much ready with the basic shape of the rock. So in the next video we'll just start working with some other brushes, and we'll start sculpting the main details, and we'll continue improving the shape. But yeah, I think that for now this one will work really well.